Welcome to the Principles of Management course week 3. I look forward to working with you during this session. I'm going to start by sharing a couple of different organizational structures. The first here is a functional structure or a flat structure. I believe most of you will work with either the functional flat structure or the virtual structure. So as you can see, the structure is very flat. There's the president, and then there's research and marketing, finance, manufacturing, and marketing. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages to the functional structure. The first is that there's a very fast response rate in having this flat structure, and that the structure is flexible in an unstable environment, and that this particular structure fosters concern for customer needs, and it has excellent coordination across functional departments. The two advantages or disadvantages to the functional flat structure is that there's a lot of duplication of resources across division, and that there's less technical depth and specialization. So this is a great structure for a business just starting up. There's the divisional structure. This is for a more established business. As you can see, there's many levels here. Then we're going to move over to the matrix structure, where there's the three departments: human resources, manufacturing, and accounting, and then division 1 and 2 for the products. So this is a different type of structure. It's industry based. I'm going to share with you the team structure, and then that's the visual of it, and then the virtual structure. And there's some advantages and disadvantages to this virtual structure. Let's say you want to do an online business on how to develop leadership skills for different types of industry. So it's an online business. Here, some advantages is that you can draw upon the expertises worldwide. So there's lots and lots of great expertises that individuals have throughout the United States, throughout the world. This particular structure is highly flexible and it's responsive, and also the big advantage here is that there's no overhead. There's a reduced level of overhead here. So, but it's generally very small. And then the disadvantage for the virtual is that there is a level of lack of control with personnel. There tends to be weak boundaries with staff. Greater demands on a manager, and then there's weaker employee loyalty. So those are just a few. There are advantages and disadvantages to the various structures that I just presented. I'm going to move into the next area, which is organizational change, and this is the force field analysis. The author to this analysis is Kurt Lewin. He developed the force field analysis in 1912. It's a classic. And here Lewin is saying that after you identify a problem and you've done a literature review, you've looked at what other industries are doing to solve different types of problems like your organization has at the current time, it's time to develop alternatives. So we always start with the status quo, and then we develop alternative 1 and 2. And so you list out like the various advantages and the disadvantages per alternative, just as the visual shows here. And then you begin to look at, and keep in mind that the driving forces are the advantages per alternative, and that the restraining forces are the disadvantages. Then the team goes in and arbitrarily allocates points, and whatever intervention or alternative has the highest points, that's generally the alternative that gets moved forward and selected. So this is a great model. I'm going to have you work with this model in the organizational development and change course. Moving to our next area. Oh, there's 3 things I want you to know about change and reasons why individuals resist change. So I'm just going to start by defining change. The need for change is the disparity between existing and desired performance. And then there's 3 different reasons why people resist change. And the first is they're concerned about how that change is going to impact them, their roles. They may lack an understanding of the change, or they may not trust those promoting the particular change. And then there's just uncertainty. Employees may want, maybe they're just unsure about the change, and they're asking the question, well, why move forward with something we really don't understand when we know the status quo is working for us? So that takes place through education, communication, getting employees involved in the process. So this part of it, if you can get past those three elements with respect to the particular change you're trying to propose, you're on your way, you're good to go. So next, I'm going to talk about human resource management, and there's three different elements. There's finding the right people, which is tougher than most would think, managing talent, and maintaining an effective workforce. And I'm going to start with finding the right people, and we're going to first look at the definition of job analysis. And before going into that, I want you to know that human resource planning is the first step. And job analysis, and I have a better definition of it on the next slide, but here it's a systematic process of gathering information and responsibilities about a job role. And then the job description is a summary of the duties, and then the job specification are the elements needed to fulfill the job. So what's the minimal amount of education needed? What's the minimal amount of skill set, experience needed, etc. I'm going to go into a little more detail on this next slide. And this is a better definition of job analysis. It's a systematic process of gathering information about any job position with respect to knowledge, skills, and attributes needed for a position. Now, there's just different ways to conduct a job analysis. Usually it's it's a specialist in the human resource department, and they go in and they would take a look at a particular role, let's just say one of the program director's roles, and they will observe the program director, and then they will do that at certain times throughout the year. And then they have a diary or a log, and they'll begin to log what they see that person doing in their role. And then they'll interview both the manager and the employee. First the manager, to get a perception of what the manager thinks that incumbent is doing, and then the employee. And sometimes there's different perceptions, so you want to interview both the employee and the manager, and so through that process, you can begin to understand what kind of information is needed before putting together a job description, which is my next term. It identifies the tasks, duties, and responsibilities. So let's say you're beginning to put together a new position. This is a great format to follow. It's also a useful format to follow as you look at existing positions and may want to make some changes to it. So now I'm going into selecting. It's always very, very important. Most positions require you to fill out an application online. Some positions require you to take different kinds of employment tests, cognitive abilities tests, physical ability, let's say the police department or the Marines, Armies, Coast Guard, there's different types of physical tests required, personality tests, brain teasers. So this is prior to hiring someone, you're in the selection process. And then there's different types of interviews that an employer can set up, like a structured or a panel interview, a biographical interview, a behavioral or a situational interview. And so I'm going to show you a video on some of these types of interviews, and then my last slide is your research paper. I'll let you read through that on your own. So I hope you have a clear understanding of the various organizational structures and human resources. Make sure you watch those videos that are coming up next. So I wish you the very best. May God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you in week 4.